We're just gonna hang out for the next hour, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have about veganism or animal rights activism. If you have arguments that you're struggling with, you don't know how to respond to, objection handling, if there are things you're not sure about, whatever it might be, I'm here to answer. Alright, first question coming in. What should I feed my dog or cat if I'm vegan? You need to do your research first to make sure that you know exactly what your cat or dog needs in their diet, and then you should create that with plant-based food that you cook at home or the plant-based cat food or dog food that you can buy. So you can do a combination, and then there's certain vitamins or minerals that they might need added to their food. It's a bit different for dogs and cats because their needs are a bit different. So that's what you need to research. I don't have any experience with feeding cats at all, so I'm not able to help you with that. But with dogs, there are certain foods that they should avoid because it would make them really sick. And other than that, they're pretty easy. You can cook a meal for them, like I said, at home, and then mix it with some dry vegan dog food. And then you can add some supplements to it if they need it, if they're not getting it from their diet. So it's pretty easy, and I do believe that vegans, if they have animals at home, animals that can eat a plant-based diet, they should do that. To me, it doesn't make sense for me to be vegan and then have 3 cats at home and then buy other animal flesh for them to feed them. It doesn't make any sense that I'm keeping one animal or even a few animals at home and then I'm paying for hundreds and thousands of other animals like horses and cows and pigs and chickens to be tortured and killed so that I can feed the animals that I have at home. I don't see how the cat's life matters more than the horse or the cow or the pig that was tortured and slaughtered for that animal to become food for them. The only exception obviously is the animals that are just not going to survive on a plant-based diet, and that's a different story. But cats and dogs can survive on a plant-based diet and they can be very healthy. You need to do your own research and feed them the right kind of food according to their age, according to their individual bodies, because they might be suffering from some kind of condition. Someone said, is this a cult? And then someone explained, and then they said, too bad because I've been looking for a cult. It's interesting because if you're a non-vegan, you are part of a cult. Probably biggest cult ever existed. Sacrificing animals and slitting their throats your entire life to eat them as food, that sounds like a fucking cult to me. So if you're a non-vegan, you've already been a part of one. Is it hypocritical to be vegan and work at a non-vegan job? For example, I work as a bartender. I see what you're saying about it being hypocritical to be vegan and work at a non-vegan job, but it is a non-vegan world that we're living in. So like, you have to also be realistic. If you have the opportunity to work for a vegan company or an organization or start your own vegan business, that's great. Obviously, that's ideal. But if you can't, you do need that. You need the money to survive. You need to be able to live, right? So if your only option is to work at a non-vegan business, then you're going to have to do that. And I can understand that it's very difficult sometimes, because I used to work, first when I went vegan, I used to work at a catering company and I used to work with animal products all day, and it was very hard for me, but I needed the money, and until I was able to change my work, I was doing that for like 6 months or a year. I can't remember exactly, but I can totally understand what you're saying. And it may not even be that you're directly working with animal products. It may just be that you're working for a company that pays for animals to be tortured and murdered, and that obviously goes against your values. But again, if you don't have any other options, you're just gonna have to do it. And no, it doesn't make you a hypocrite, because you're doing the best that you can. And it doesn't make you less of a vegan or anything, because you do need the money to survive. So I think the goal should be working towards either starting your own business or finding a job that is with a vegan company and it doesn't involve animal abuse. But until then, you're just gonna have to do what you need to do to survive. Is it vegan to have worms in your compost bin? I guess that's a very technical question, but it's interesting. So I'm just gonna give you my opinion. I don't think it is ethical to do that. I think there are ways of doing it without having worms. I would recommend that if that's what you've been doing, just look into the alternative. I've been thinking about starting doing my own compost, and I live in an apartment, but I do have like a little balcony with lots of plants and there's like a little garden. So I'm thinking about creating it in there, and that way if there are worms down there in the soil, they're going to come and go and they're free to do that. So I recommend doing something like that if you have an outdoor area. But if you're going to do it in a bin inside, then yeah, I do recommend not using worms because I don't think that's ethical. You're going to bring them in and you're going to trap them in that space. So I know that there are many ways, but because I haven't done it yet, I don't have the knowledge, but I know that it's possible and I recommend that you look into it. Which way of activism do you find more effective? Like I said, I think there needs to be a conversation. That's the only kind of activism that I find effective. And so obviously I find the cube to be very effective because you get to show the footage, have the conversation, and if that person is going to have a moment where they're thinking about their own behavior and realizing that they've been a hypocrite because their actions don't align with their values, then you see that change happening right in front of you. So that's why I think the cubes are so effective. It doesn't have to be at a cube. Like I said, the way that I see activism work is when you're having like a productive conversation with the non-vegans. So as much as I love marches and protests and things like that, I just don't think that they create that kind of productive conversation. The non-vegan would just witness and observe and just walk away. But when you have a conversation with someone, when you ask them questions, you make them think, and that's the only way you can create change. By making that individual think about their own actions and for them to come to their own conclusion instead of being told. That's how I see it. Do you miss meat? No, of course not. How could I miss meat when I know that that's tortured body of an individual that didn't want to die for my food? If you're new to veganism, you may sometimes think I miss the flavor or the texture or whatever, and you can create all of that with plants. But if you're truly convinced on veganism and the ethics, you would never miss that, because that texture or flavor or that product would mean someone had to be raped, tortured and murdered. So you would never want to go back to that. How do you recommend outreaching hunters who willingly kill animals themselves? The same way as we do. You have to hold them accountable. They might be so disconnected that they might not be ready to hear and the conversation may not go anywhere, but you don't have to necessarily change the way you do outreach. You hold them accountable and you remind them that they are just selfishly taking someone's life. They may call it sport, entertainment, or they may do it for food. And I think the best thing that you could ask them is, what if you were in their position? Because I'm imagining the hunter would say, I don't care for the animals and they're just animals and they don't have the capacity to understand or what's their purpose or whatever. I'm better than them, I'm at the top of the food chain. This kind of stupid argument. So I think the only thing that might work with a hunter is if you ask them to put themselves in the victim's position and ask them, what if you were being hunted by some kind of alien creature that was superior to you in the ways that they are superior to the animals? How would you feel then? Would you be happy to be their victim and be just killed and ripped apart and chopped up just for a meal? That's what I would say to a hunter. And then, like I said, they're probably too far gone in their conditioning, but maybe there's hope, and then you'll be able to help them connect to that. What's your opinion about people who use animal skins for their clothes and shoes? When you go vegan, when you're convinced on veganism, that goes obviously beyond the diet. So it's not just eating a plant-based diet, it's also staying away from clothing that was made from animal skin. It would also be not using products that have animal products in them or they were tested on animals. So veganism is living a life that is trying to stay away from all kinds of animal products and all forms of animal exploitation as far as possible. Not wearing animal skin is very much possible and practical, so you would not wear anything that is made from animal skin as a vegan. So if you go vegan and you still have animal products, like you still have shoes and bags and belts and things that are made from animal skin, or if you have clothing made of wool or silk or anything that comes from an animal, what I recommend doing is, if you can afford to replace it, do that. Do not continue to wear it, because otherwise you're promoting the idea that animals should be used for clothing. And what I recommend doing with your clothing is to burn them. To burn them and bury the ashes. Giving it to someone, giving it to charity or a friend, again, promotes the idea that it's okay to wear animal skin, even though you're not wearing it yourself, but you're saying that it's okay for others to do it. And that's why I don't recommend that. If you're still wearing animal skin and you're just saying that I'm vegan, you're only doing the diet thing, which is a plant-based diet. You may not be buying things that are tested on animals as well, but still you're promoting some use of animal products, which could easily be replaced. Zoe said, when doing outreach and the person has seen, witnessed or participated in the truth of animal cruelty, and after holding them accountable, they say they just don't care. How do you end outreach conversation? What if you were in their position? So that's the only thing that you can say to someone that doesn't care. Like I was saying about hunters, they're usually people that don't care about the animals, but you also get the average non-vegan sometimes that says that they just don't care. They're very disconnected, and sometimes they lie about it so you can just let them go. They don't want to continue with the conversation, and sometimes they may be genuinely saying that they don't care and they mean it. So if they don't care, you say, what if you were in the victim's position? Would you care then? And then see what they say. If they say something and they want to continue, then you can keep going. If not, and if they say something like, well, they're just animals, I'm a human, and they walk away, then that's fine. But if they say, what if you were in their position, and their response to that is, well, they're animals and I'm a human, so I'm better than them, then what you can say to that is, in what ways are you superior to the animals? Are you basing that on intelligence, or what is it that makes you superior? And then when they give you an answer, then you can work with that. Because it's usually the fact that people think they're better than animals because they're more intelligent, because humans can create technology and things like that. So if it's intelligence, you can say, okay, so lack of intelligence makes it okay for you to kill someone. What about those kids that are born, babies that are born with a mental disability and they're not as intelligent? Does that mean that we should just kill them? Based on what they say, you can continue with the conversation, but that's the only thing you can say. What if you were in their position? Summer said, how to deal with a situation where someone is being forced to eat meat at least weekly, or be kicked out by parents who are concerned being vegan will damage their health. If your parents are forcing you to eat anything, that's child abuse. So you should report it if you're old enough to think that. I'm guessing you're not asking for yourself because you're asking for someone else. But if that individual that is being forced to do anything, if they're being physically abused, they should report it. That's child abuse. If the parents are kicking them out, if you're old enough to move out of your parents' house and you can survive on your own, then you can do that. If you're old enough to have a job and you make money, etc. But other than that, you should first of all report it if it's domestic violence, and then if it's not that bad and it's not literally them physically forcing them to eat something, then they should stand their ground and explain to their parents why they want to be vegan, and show them the truth and show them the science as well, that veganism is not going to damage their health necessarily. It's about how they plan their own diet. And yeah, that's it. Your parents don't have the right to physically abuse you, to force you to eat animal products. Do you think it's hypocritical to protest about other injustice and at the same time don't care about animal rights? Yeah, maybe. It depends what you mean. Is it hypocritical to speak up for one injustice and not speak up about animal rights. I think it depends on what kind of injustice. Like recently we shared a video from, I think, Spain, where there was a protest and then protesters were throwing pig heads at the police. And this happened earlier this year with the BLM protests as well. And we posted about it at that time as well. The fact that these people are protesting an injustice and they are throwing these pig heads at the police, trying to say police are pigs, trying to disrespect pigs and trying to use pigs as a symbol of something degrading and negative, and it's a form of disrespect for them. It's an insult to call someone a pig. That just shows how much humans hate pigs and animals. So in that case, I think, yeah, it is hypocritical to try to fight an injustice by oppressing other individuals, like another group of species or another group of beings. So in this case, they're protesting the government or the police by spreading so much hatred about pigs or about animals. And yes, that's hypocritical. So I do think that that's where the problem starts, kind of, because it's like, why can't you protest your government and speak up about whatever it is that you're concerned with without making it about how much you hate animals? It doesn't even make sense to myself, and I'm sure many of you can relate, because even when I was not vegan, I would never use that comparison because I just didn't think like that. I was just not aware of how I was contributing to animal abuse, right? But I wasn't consciously just hating on animals like that. So to me, it blows my mind how they think that this is like a really strong point to make, and this is how they're speaking up about their rights by hating on another species. It just doesn't make any sense to me. They're calling the cops who are brutally assaulting black people pigs. Yeah, and I know that's been going on for years. Like, it's not just something that started this year at the BLM protest. This is something that, like, I recently learned about this because, like I said, I didn't know about this. I didn't know that they call cops pigs. I didn't know that's a thing. And I'm forever correcting myself and other people when we say something like, I don't know, it's like a pig, or he's a pig, or, you know, referring to someone who's greedy, for example, or using animals as an insult or to make a point. And that happens in every language. I know that happens in English, that happens in Farsi, which is my first language, and it happens in every language. In Spanish it happens. So it's like the oppression and this injustice. That's why I said it's the first form of injustice or the first form of discrimination, because it's like so deeply rooted in our culture. All cultures, not just one. It's not just Americans who do this, right? It's like deeply rooted in our language and the culture and everything. So we need to be conscious. Even as vegans, we need to be conscious about it. I've seen so many vegans just referring to animals as it, and say things like what I just said, like referring to people as pigs or cows or a weasel or a snake or whatever. It's not a compliment to the animal. We all know that these are things that are demeaning and insulting. Like calling someone a snake means you're two-faced or you're sneaky and you're gonna stab me in the back, or calling someone a pig means you're just greedy. So these are not compliments, and we need to be mindful of it. First of all, we need to correct ourselves as vegans and as animal rights activists, and then we need to correct the rest of the world as well. But yeah, it's not something that was exclusive to the cops that were killing and assaulting black people. It's just something that now we know in Spain is the same thing. In many countries would be the same thing. They protest the police. They're like saying they have an issue with the police, and then they express that by calling them pigs. How is that helping? Feed two birds with one hand. The one that I've heard that is kind of cute is feeding two birds with one scone, because it kind of rhymes with the original, which is stone. Killing two birds with one stone. feeding 2 birds with 1 scone. I don't know if birds like scones, but yeah, it's funny. What is a vegan alternative for cheese? Plenty of vegan cheese. Cheese just refers to the texture and consistency. You can create that with cow's milk, or you can create that with plant milk and nuts. So you can just look up vegan cheese and see how many options you'll see. If you're discussing veganism with someone and they are being difficult or just don't want to hear it, do you ever give up on them? If someone's not interested, yeah, I won't waste my time. I guess it depends on the situation. So if it's at a cube, I will definitely not waste my time because there are so many other people that are going to walk past that are going to be open. So why would I waste my time with this one person, right? I'll just move on to the next person. But there are some times where you're stuck with someone and they can't get away from you. So in that case, maybe it's good to keep going, just keep asking the questions and make them think. Or if it's like a family member or a friend, same thing. If it gets difficult and they get, I don't know, emotional, or they just walk away and they're not involved, like engaged in the conversation, you may want to drop it then, but then you can pick it up later. So it's not like you're giving up on them forever. It's just like you can stop the conversation and then bring it up later, or they might bring it up. So you just keep going with the same conversation if it's like a friend that you regularly see. But a random stranger on the street, if somebody is just not answering my questions, I will just not continue with them for the reason that I said. You don't want to waste your time. Yes, horseback riding is not vegan. Again, if you're riding horses, you're promoting the idea that using and abusing animals is okay. Horses don't need to be ridden by humans. They can just do their own exercise and they don't need the human to get involved in there. And because I know like people that ride horses, this is their excuse. They say, oh, but the horse needs the exercise. No, they don't need it from you. They can just do it on their own. And the only reason why many people have these horses is because they want to ride them. And you can't call yourself a vegan while you're still doing that. Is there a way to discuss benefits of veganism to an environmental audience and still keep it about the animals? Does environmental stuff take away from animal message? Yeah, it does take away from animal message, because let's say you're talking to an audience of sexist men and you make it about how not abusing women and not oppressing women is good for their mental health. It's just not relevant. It takes away from the fact that women should not be oppressed. It takes away from women's right. So it's the same thing. You're talking about animal rights, and then when you bring up the environmental benefits or the health benefits, you're taking away from animal rights, and also mainly about health. You may be wrong, because being vegan doesn't always mean healthier, for example. So you're just not being honest either. So it seems like you're willing to make things up or say things just to get that person's attention. Environment is a little bit different. Veganism can help the environment, but it definitely takes away from the animals. So the only way I see it work is when you're having a conversation with someone, if they bring it up, you can respond to it, but always make it about the animals and bring it back to the animals. So if the person says, and veganism does help the environment, right? You can say yes and why, but make it about the injustice rather than just the environment. And then at the end also bring it back to the animal and say, just to be clear though, veganism is about animal rights. Veganism is about not exploiting animals. The goal is not to have environmental benefits or health benefits or anything else. It's just about returning these animals their right that was always theirs and we took from them as humans. So always make it about animal rights. This nonsense about vegans being nice, Nobody ever goes vegan because vegans are nice. Nobody is going to be convinced on the ethics of veganism and then says, I'm not going to go vegan because vegans are rude. This is all bullshit. And as vegans and as animal rights activists, you guys really need to stop talking like this, making this all about like being nice to each other and being loving and compassionate and kind. We're talking about animal rights, and we're talking about the biggest injustice. People are telling you that riding horses doesn't align with the values of veganism, and you're talking to people about being nice to you, someone who is abusing animals willingly. Animal rights activists are not here to make friends, and they're not here to be nice and be loved and liked and be respected by non-vegans or other vegans. Animal rights activists, their only job is to speak up for the victims who are the animals, whether they're horses being ridden by humans or they're cows being slaughtered at a slaughterhouse. So it's got nothing to do with me wanting to make friends here. It's about me doing my job as if I'm in the animals' positions. So if you were that horse being ridden, you wouldn't want people to just be nice to your slave master. You would want them to talk to them and hold them accountable so that they would set you free. It's got nothing to do with being nice, okay? Just stop this bullshit, please. Nowhere in the definition of veganism does it state that we are more compassionate people. We just find the torture, rape, and slaughter of an animal completely unacceptable. Yeah, you don't, I mean, obviously, like, compassion is like, what does compassion mean? It just means that you can see an injustice and you can have empathy for that. What do you do with it is more important than just acknowledging it. So the fact that you call yourself vegan is one thing, but the fact that you are truly convinced on the ethics of veganism and on the principles, and you truly do your 100% to align your actions with that value is another thing. So to pick and choose, that doesn't fit into the definition of veganism. I'm vegan, I do all these other things, but then I like to have a hen in my backyard and I do take the eggs, or I do ride my horse, but I do it ethically, I do it different to other people. None of these are vegan. None of these fit into the definition of veganism. And it's got nothing to do with love, compassion, kindness. It's got everything to do with respecting that these animals are individuals and they deserve to have their own rights. Veganism is a lifestyle, not a diet. I don't say it's a lifestyle. I always say it's a stance you take against an injustice. Like if I'm against racism, it's not a lifestyle. It's not an anti-racist lifestyle or anti-sexist lifestyle. It's just a stance that I'm taking against that injustice. And within that, I can have different kinds of lifestyles. Like you can be vegan and you can have a different lifestyle to someone else who's vegan. So for example, me and you are both vegan. Your lifestyle might be, eating raw and riding a bicycle and trying to be low waste, etc. And my lifestyle as a vegan could be living in a city, driving a car, eating junk food all day, every day. You know what I mean? It's both vegan, but they're different lifestyles. So veganism is not a lifestyle, it's not a diet. Obviously, it does have those aspects to it to some degree, but it really is taking a stance against animal exploitation, which is an injustice. And then you choose what kind of lifestyle you want to have, what kind of diet you want to have. Do you want to eat shit? Do you want to eat junk food? Do you want to eat whole foods? Do you want to be raw? Do you want to eat a mixture of different diets? Do you want to, live low waste or zero waste? Do you not give a fuck about the environment? Are you political? Are you religious? All of those things are different lifestyles, in my opinion, but they can all be vegan. How do you respond to people who bring up culture or indigenous lifestyles and call veganism a privilege? The definition of privilege is to use someone for their body parts and what comes out of their body. You're privileged if you can do that, if you think that you should do that. So being a non-vegan is the ultimate definition of privilege. Now, when it comes to indigenous people, we're I've never come across a single one at a cube. So when other people that like the average non-vegan who lives in a city brings this up, it's just a distraction. How is that the fact that somebody else somewhere is living like you said, an indigenous lifestyle, keeping this non-vegan that I'm outreaching from being vegan? Because when we do outreach, we're holding that individual accountable against their own actions. So I'm talking to you now. You tell me why you're not vegan. I don't care about the fact that somebody else somewhere in the world is living the lifestyle that for them may not be practical to be vegan. I don't even want to have that conversation because it's irrelevant. That's how you should approach it. Unless you come across one and then you want to talk about it. But like I said, I've never come across a single indigenous person. Never ever in the last 5 years of doing what I'm doing. Isn't it true natural flavor or natural color contains some sort of insect-like ingredient? Yes. So when you buy something that has additives in it, when you read the ingredient list and the numbers like 121 or 120 or whatever, I can't remember the names, but there are many colors that contain animal ingredients, and then there is always the chemical based one or the organic, like the plant based ones. So you gotta find out what you're buying, if it contains any coloring or any natural flavor, if those additives are coming from an animal source, a chemical source, or a plant based source. I use an app that's really good. I'm pretty sure it was free. It's called VegSafe, VEG Safe, and that has all these additives, so you can just type it in and it will tell you if that's from an animal or if it's plant-based. So I recommend using something like that because there's literally thousands of these additives and there's no way you're going to memorize all of them. Some of them are more common, like the red color, and that comes from those little insects that look like little cockroaches. So some people, I think, memorize those common numbers, but I haven't. So I always just use my app. You can use that or you can just simply Google it. But yeah, make sure you do that about products that you're not sure of. Is it wrong to kill mosquitoes when you're vegan? I don't think so. When it comes to mosquitoes, they could be carrying disease. They also do attack you. And therefore, I think that's a different story to, I don't know, like a spider just doing their own thing or a worm just like doing their own thing on the ground. Yeah, I have a different position on mosquitoes, and I do understand that many people would disagree with me, but I'm not willing to take the risk. If an animal, an insect, or a human attacks me, I'm going to defend myself. So if that means that they're going to be killed in the process, I'm okay with that. Mosquitoes do attack you. Flies as well. Flies could be carrying a lot of, they literally eat shit, so they could be carrying a lot of nasty stuff, and that's why I think you can't put them in the same category as a harmless spider. So yeah, that's my position on mosquitoes. If somebody doesn't like what you're saying and they get annoyed, you just have to figure out whether that person is worth your time or not. So being annoyed is one thing, because being annoyed means that they have digested the information you're providing and it has done something to them. Being angry and being uncomfortable is not necessarily a bad sign, because our entire life we have been living a lie until we wake up to the truth. So for me, I was not vegan for 26 years. I went vegan when I was 26, I should say it like that. And so for the first 26 years of my life, I just didn't know. So when I was presented with the truth, I was shocked, I was angry, I was going mad, and that's uncomfortable. So if I was being outraged, because I wasn't outraged, that's not, I just did it on my own. But if I was being outraged, I would imagine that I would feel really uncomfortable for the first, I don't know, at least 5-10 minutes of the conversation. And everyone responds differently. So one person might try to attack you back. You're the messenger, but they see you as, you know, the problem, because you're the one who just woke me up, and how dare you. So I'm going to attack you back. It could be that they want to run away from the truth, so they're just going to keep walking. Or it could be that they're so open-minded and ready that they're going to be like, you know what, thank you so much, I'm grateful, because now I'm going to be conscious of my actions. I don't want to be a part of this. So yeah, that's not your fault if they are annoyed or angry. But what you need to do is, based on their reaction, you need to decide if this conversation is productive or not. I would say if that person's getting aggressive and violent, that's when you need to end it. But if they are just uncomfortable and annoyed, you may be able to continue with the conversation for as long as they're willing to talk to you. How to convince someone with a medical condition that they don't need to eat animal products when their doctors who have saved their life advise them to. Tell them that all of these universities are funded by these huge industries like animal agriculture and the pharmaceutical companies. So that means that the information that they're being provided is biased, and that they should do their own independent research or speak to a plant-based doctor to make sure that they're getting the information that is truthful and honest and has their best interest. So the responsibility is 100% on the individual to find the information, and that's all you can tell them. You can tell them that animal products are actually causing different kinds of conditions and all of that, but that would be taking away from veganism. So while you can tell them the stuff that I just said, you should also tell them that animals are not ingredients. Animals are individual beings, and they have the right to live their life and not be treated like an object or an ingredient for us to use as medication or as food, etc. So animal rights is not about our health. It's not about the fact that these animals are just some ingredients for us like calcium and iron. They're actual living, breathing, innocent individuals, sentient beings that deserve to just live their life. And we don't have the right to just treat them as ingredients. We don't own them. We don't own their bodies and what comes out of them. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me, and I'm glad that many of you found it helpful. I love seeing your positive comments and I really appreciate it. So I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for joining me. Much love, everyone. Take care.